It's Mom and Pop Video Shop.
Welcome to the Mom and Pop Video Shop. We are here with another of our indie filmmaking interviews, which I know that Tyson, I feel like I could speak for you when I say this as well, we love doing. We love indie film. We love promoting and celebrating indie film.
Absolutely.
We love DIY.
And I have to confess, I feel like most of the time you're at the helm on these. For whatever reason, it's been a minute since I've sat in on an indie filmmaker.
That's true.
Interview,
Usually you just
I'm super happy
them.
to be here. Yeah, I have shit to do.
You have a life or something, whatever.
Not really.
So, yeah. So we're here though. We're here with and even though I know before we started recording, I was patting myself on the back for pronouncing your full name correctly, but you said we could just refer to you as Balraj Kang. But I said Balraj, which was correct.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of myself. All right. So yes, we have Balraj Kang, the director of, let's see, we got obviously Mother Mortis.
Yeah.
We have the Birdwatcher.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure we'll get into some of your other productions and where people can find those and all that good stuff. But before we get into all of that, so we came about meeting you, I think, by way of Tony Moran, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. Uncle Tony, as everyone calls him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess you had gotten into cahoots with him, which is funny because I think we had him on the show and he mentioned this UK filmmaker that he was working with and that he was going to be releasing some of his stuff on VHS and all that. And and then you reached out on Instagram and I didn't put two and two together at first. I didn't equate. And then you said something. I was like, wait a minute. Why does it sound so familiar? I was like, oh, that's right. That's the guy that Tony's working with. Cool. Yeah. So even if you hadn't mentioned any of that other stuff, I'm like, let's have him on anyway. You seem like a really nice, cool dude. But for the purposes of getting us rolling here, the movie that you did that it sort of introduced us to you and your work was Mother Mortis. And I was going to ask, go ahead and whatever your pitch is for Mother Mortis, if you want to tell the audience what that's about.
Yeah, so it's a crazy sort of supernatural slasher. I got inspired by reading like the Bleeding Skull books because I've always been a fan of low budget DIY horror. So I wanted to make something which was like the British sort of like homage to like all the films in the because obviously they got the 80s and the 90s 2 books. So it's a slasher. It's basically about a serial killer and his sort of cult who are trying to raise a demon through human sacrifices. And yeah, it's a bit batshit crazy. But yeah.
Okay, hold on, Paul. I do have to real quick. I don't want to derail you, but Tyson, if you don't mind me, just real quick. I not to throw Tyson under the bus, no way, shape, or form. I do want to say Tyson wanted to know if we'd be asking you about the Lovecraftian raisin face fucking scene.
Yeah.
I bring that up only to say for anyone listening, if that's not your bag.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah. That was like, obviously I've always been a big fan of Lovecraft. Like I think most like horror filmmakers and people just involved like that. Yeah. So yeah, that was I had to get an actor who would be willing to do it. I had to persuade him, and Mark, who did it, was like, he's great. He's in Birdwatcher as well as the transvestite wife. So yeah, it's just a bit of I wanted to do something which was a bit weird, and obviously that sort of
mission accomplished, my friend.
Yeah.
I just watched Eraserhead for the first time. I had never seen Eraserhead, and I definitely was going to ask you if there would any Lynchian sort of inspiration for you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, I was going to say though. How many times have we talked about this when Lovecraft comes up? You always hear people say that Lovecraftian projects would be so hard to adapt to film because it's so batshit crazy that, everything Lovecraftian is, if you even lay eyes on this, you're going to go nuts. So how do you convey that? But so, man, kudos to you for putting it out there and going batshit crazy with that scene. Because as soon as I saw it, I'm like, man, if you're going to do a demon resurrection and that's the only way to feed it,
Go
for it.
That's awesome. So I did want to ask, so how did the project come about? So this is your second feature? Was Birdwatcher first, or is this the first one?
So Mortis was the first. That sort of came about because actually I made a film before that, which was called Defenders Eternal, which was like based on Norse mythology. But I bit off too much, more than I could chew. So that ended up being a massive project, and it was a bit overwhelming. And then over the sort of course of time, I was like, I need to put that aside because I'm just not ready to like get it out there yet. So then I started doing Mortis because to me, I was sort of like, I was a bit down in the dumps after the first one because I was like, I felt like shit, you know. I
can
felt
relate.
like, and then Mortis was like me trying to prove to myself that I'm actually a filmmaker because you know, I think a lot of us that are DIY filmmakers at least have like imposter syndrome, you know. So Mortis was like, I had to make something so I could say to people, yeah, I'm a director because I made a film. And then, you know, I made a lot of mistakes during that process, just learning, because I've self-taught myself everything from writing, directing, shooting, editing, and I'm learning SFX. So it's like, I've tried to just do as much as I can. And Birdwatcher was like me maturing a bit more. The story's tighter, you know, it was less crazier, but it was more sort of focused, you know. So I made that 2 years ago. It's taken me 2 years to edit it because editing is a ball ache. And then I also shot another third feature called Diwali Maniac Bloodbath, which is basically like a Brit Asian slasher film that I'm editing at the moment.
Cool.
So yeah, that will be my third.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. No, and I like that you have that self-awareness and perspective, because I think the reason why so many, and I mean, filmmaking definitely has this, but I feel like a lot of anything where you have to put yourself out there, right? You're going to have imposter syndrome. I mean, I worked at one of my old jobs. It was a corporate job, and they wanted me to take on this role of like programming, like computer-based training. And as I told them, and I was already working there. So it's like, I can't even barely spell HTML. So if you're, I would, it was like total imposter syndrome. Like I had no business now, and it was like deep into the pool. You just have to jump in, and I made lots of mistakes, and that's the key, right? It's like if you're willing, and as a filmmaker, if you're gonna ever put your stuff out in the world, you're kind of putting your mistakes out in the world. You're putting, you know, all of that out there, and it takes balls, man. And I got to be honest with you, I respect the hell out of that. So I love talking to indie filmmakers because, it's and as one who, you know, was an indie filmmaker in my past, tried to get back into it again. I could tell you, for me, like I talked a lot when I was younger. Like, you know, I was one of those guys. Oh yeah, we're working on this, we're working on that, and then nothing ever happens with it. And I hated that inside. Like I hated doing that. Like, cause it's like, but doing something is scary. Actually do, because you're not gonna be perfect. Because, and the worst part is, and there's a name for the psychological condition. I don't remember what it's called, but we all have it, where if you watch lots of movies, for example, you know what looks good. You know what a good narrative story. But there's a difference between knowing that, you know, externally and being able to create it. And it's like your reach exceeds your grasp, you know, sort of thing, where it's like, you know, and you know that, but it's like, so you don't try. And the irony is the only way you're going to get better is by doing. And the problem with film is, unlike painting, let's say, with painting, say you will learn how to paint. You could try to be turned out of painting every day. Like you could just be right. You could technically. So, or at least very close. And it's like, okay, I'm done with that one. Next move, go. Whereas with filmmaking, it's like you said, you're spending 2 years just editing this last one. So, you know, you've got to, that's all, it's the whole process. With filmmaking, it's not just, being a director, all the stuff you have to learn from that. Because let's be honest, how many days did it take you to shoot Mother Mortis, give or take? So
Mortis took 6 days. And when I told people that, they were like, whoa, because people like take 2-3 weeks to shoot. And that was basically because I funded it all just with the money that I make off my day job. So it's like, I couldn't afford to do tons of reshoots. It was like, we got to get this right, you know? And I think that pressure is good because, you know, it gets people to perform, because you can't take 20 takes. You got to do it in 2 or 3. But then obviously when you go back to edit, you're like, oh, you know, I should have maybe done this that way, or I should have added this in. But by that time, people have moved on. People might not be acting anymore. People may not be in the country. Like, so it's like a lot of changes happen. So you have to like strike while the iron's hot and get all the footage, you know, and then, you know, editing. Some people, I envy the people that edit really fast and they got 5 movies out a year. Like, I can't do that. Like, to me, 1 movie a year is great, you know, like, and it takes time because you have to go through and put it all down. Then you have to go through and do the sound, and the sound is always really difficult because unless you've got really expensive mics, you're going to have problems sound wise. Then color grading it, and you know, but like you said, making the mistakes and putting them out there, you learn and you want to get better. You don't want to end up being in the syndrome where you get worse as a director. You want to be getting better. Like certain directors, and I always talk to people about it, and I won't name their names just in case they hear this, you know, they get worse. They do their best films at the start and they get worse because they get comfortable. They lose their team that brought the magic. Other directors, like, they're not as good at the start and they get better and better and better and better. And, you know, I definitely feel like I'm probably in the latter category because I feel like I'm like just getting started, you know, and the problem is here in the UK is it's extremely, you'd think it's not as competitive because obviously US is bigger and you guys are like, you know, the hub for like world cinema still, you know, regardless of what people say, you know. So it's like, what I found is all the US people that I met, Anthony, Janice Click, you know, all these people that I met that are like really supportive, really nice, you know, really happy to help you get your stuff out there, you know. It's not the same here in the UK, you know. We don't have that.
Well, and I think just to give another shout out to Tony Moran, man, like he is all about regional filmmaking, right? And we've talked with him several times about, you know, support films made in Detroit, and Joel and I talk about all the time about how, especially with indie now, you don't have to go to Hollywood. You don't have to go to Atlanta.
I personally would advise against it, but that's just my own personal.
Yeah, I mean, use what you have, but it's funny, you know, that you talk about the US still being the hub. And Joel, how many times, especially me, I bitch about this all the time, that I think US horror movies are, by and large, there are some exceptions, but lately they're garbage. I mean, we're always talking about stuff coming out of Sweden and Mexico, Argentina. J horror's been J horror for the last 2 decades, but you know what I mean? So it's I think it's easier to make a film that gets attention in the US, but sometimes that attention isn't always good, and it doesn't mean that it's a great film. So hats off to you guys that are taking advantage of your regional area and making stuff that, you know, right there in your backyard, using the resources you've got. One of my questions was going to be to ask you about the location, that sort of, you know, abandoned factory, train yard looking thing right by the I don't know if the water, if it really was on the water side or if you shot those scenes at a different location, but the location was bitching in this. I loved it.
So that was actually in Hull. So I filmed it in a few different places. So the start scenes where it's all the industrial factory by the river, that's in Hull, which is by the sea. And the bridge that you see was the Humber Bridge. And that big factory was basically an old like port fish yard, which is basically abandoned for like 20-30 years and just left in disrepair. Anyone can go there. A lot of filmmakers from the area filmed there, and that's a great location. And then later, like the scenes where it's like in the fields and stuff, that's more near my area, which is like the Midlands, like Derby, Loughborough, Leicester, and then, you know, most of my crew and stuff and actors are local, so it was just easier to carry on filming here. And like you guys probably know, like in abandoned locations, you end up finding kids messing about that are disruptive. You find other urban explorer people that want to be like, oh, what are you doing? So it's like sometimes it's better just to go out, you know. But the UK is difficult because abandoned buildings, they're very quick to board them up. Like my girlfriend lives in Spain, and I spend a lot of time in Spain. And in Spain, it is like the holy grail of abandoned buildings. There's abandoned buildings everywhere. And you're
I know what is the I don't mean to interrupt you, but the like in the States, and depending obviously what state you're in, blah blah blah. Yeah. There's like all these trespassing. You know, are you able to get into these places fairly easy, or is it still you have to be on the down low?
So in the UK, it's very tight. Like people, if it's like a building owned by somebody, they usually have neighbors around that will keep an eye on it. And if they see you're filming in there, they'll be calling the police straight away, and they'll be moving you out. And that's happened to us a few times. And usually the police are cool because they're like, you know, you're not starting fires, you're not destroying it, you're just filming. They see you got a camera, and they're like, oh, okay, you just move along. In Spain, it's different. You know what I found? The number one, there's less police about. Number two, it's a massive, like a big country, obviously not compared to America, like it's like half the size of Texas, but compared to the UK. So there's just less hassle, you know, like I found like abandoned spas with my girlfriend's help, abandoned warehouses, like near like all these beautiful locations. So it's like, it just depends whose eyes are on you, you know? And it's very difficult. Like that's one big challenge for us indie filmmakers is finding locations, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'll say though that when you do it right, like I think you did with Mother Mortis, is man, it comes across because, you know, here's a location that you were able to get into. I assume you didn't have to pay to get in there. You were shooting it guerrilla style, you know? And the thing is, you know, if you were to try to recreate that set in Hollywood, how many millions of dollars would you have to spend? Or even if you found in America, if you found that location and you wanted to, if you weren't an indie filmmaker, you'd have to hire security to keep all those kids out. And you know what I mean? That same exact location would cost you, I mean, it would blow your indie budget completely out of the water. But I think that's what's so cool. You know, when I see this stuff from indie filmmakers, I'm like, that is a badass set that I have to assume they stumbled on and didn't pay for. But talk about taking advantage of your resources, man. Well done.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah. So what was the overall production like then? Was it, I mean, you said 6 days, but was it like pretty quick and easy, or was it a slog or something in between?
Yeah. So we sort of spread it out over the course of like the year. So it was sort of like we was doing a day, and then we probably waiting a bit of time, and then we was doing and then also that's why it's actually in 6 parts, because them 6 parts is like 1 day of filming.
Gotcha.
So cool. That's not preferable though. I'd prefer to like have everyone on set and shoot for a week. Yeah. But then you got to factor in putting them in accommodation. Then people have got jobs, food, everything. So it's like it's tough when you don't have a budget, you know.
Yeah. Because I don't think people. I think a lot of folks assume. Probably a lot of people not watching this don't, because they probably a lot of people know about indie film and the how you could. A lot of indie filmmakers are making, you know, a movie for $1.05. But I think a lot of people assume they'll see this indie movie, but it's on Amazon or it's on Tubi or whatever, and so they assume, oh, it had to at least have, you know, $100,000 or more budget. It's like, no, I don't think you get it. Like people are making movies for like $1,000, maybe $2. It's, you know, so and with that's your budget, you know, if you already did you already own your gear, like your camera and everything?
Yeah. So I basically just spent like money that I'd saved up on to buy camera and lighting and all that, because obviously, like you said, it's expensive to rent gear. So I thought, why rent it when I can just buy it and use it, you know?
Totally.
And over again. So it's like that. I saw that as like an investment. But the thing is with cameras is, you know, they're always updating. There's always new ones coming out. They're getting more and more expensive. So it's like, it's just finding that right sort of entry level camera for you. Unless you've got loads of money and you're in a position where you can go and buy a really fancy camera. It's just doing the research on it and asking people, and then trying to basically find something in your budget, you know. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know what kind of camera you use, but I was gonna say that the image capturing was very good. I definitely, I don't know, like to what degree.
Lumix G90, which is pretty old camera. It's not really anything fancy. It's 4K. But I think a lot of it is down to the lenses. So
Yes.
like Mortis was just shot on standard normal lenses. Birdwatcher shot on anamorphic just because it looks more cinematic. Same with Diwali. But then the problem there is you can only shoot on anamorphic. You can't then mix the both.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's trying to make it look expensive on no budget, you know? And I think a lot of that is color grading, you know, like a lot of filmmakers that sort of start out, they don't properly color grade it. They just shoot it, they put it out, and then they like, oh, it doesn't look good on a big screen, you know? So it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of buying LUTs and filters online and getting them from friends and stuff, and then trying them out and seeing which ones sort of match the vibe. You know, I was sort of going for like an 80s, like grainy, dirty, sort of, but still vibrant, colorful vibe. So yeah, I think it's down to just color grading. You start going a bit blind when you're color grading because you're like, you're working on it and you're like, man, I need a break from this.
Yeah. I just shot a little promo for a local drive-in, and I got the iPhone 16 Pro, and I shot Apple Log, which I've never done. Like, I'm of a time when we literally edited VCR to VCR, and I had a VHS. So that's how old I am, right? So I've been getting into like learning about like LUTs and everything. I only recently found out that means lookup table. I didn't even know that. I'm like, what's a LUT? I don't know. But I decided to do the Apple Log thing. And I ended up having to buy a LUT because no matter what I just couldn't get it to look right. You know what I mean? And but once you find a good one with just a little bit of tweaking, it is amazing. It's worth every freaking penny. Every penny.
Yeah. If you guys ever need any LUTs, just shout me and I'll send you my little library that I built over time.
Oh,
like,
nice, sweet. That's
I've
awesome.
got loads of LUTs which are like based on famous films.
Oh, cool.
Like, and then I've got like Technicolor LUTs, and I've got Kodak LUTs. I've got loads of good ones. So if you ever need them, just drop me a message.
Sweet, bro. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to also ask you. So, what was you said a lot of your actors came from your area. So, what was that? What did you do? Like casting call? Did you auditions, or did you like call your friend up like, "Hey, Bob, I need you next Tuesday"?
So some of them were ones that I'd worked with on Defenders, which sort of still believed in me enough to like be in this film. And that was sort of like a redemption thing for me, thinking, you know, the last one failed and, you know, this one will work. Other ones I did do casting, and I just put it out on like people that I know and on like stuff like Mandy, which used to be called Star Now, like, and, you know, I found people that were local. Some of them had never acted before, so they were a bit like, they wanted to get in it, but they were like, you know, we don't have any acting experience. And I was just like, that's cool, because, you know, it's not like I have much experience either, you know. So it was like, you know, we was all like, I'd prefer to like work with those people who are like, you know, they're hungry and they really want it. But at the same time, then through like networking, I've managed to like get to know more like famous actors, you know, like, and like, you know, and I've been surprised that certain people that you would think would not reply to you, and you're like, oh wow, like, you know, this person's like quite famous and they reply. And then it's another case on whether you can afford their fee for the day.
There's that, yes.
But I think it's like, you know, in the area that I am in the Midlands, there isn't like an acting school. There isn't much opportunities for people, you know. So it's like, I wanted to make a little hub where we could all be together. And, you know, if they want me to help them on their film, I'd do that. And they'd act in mine, and we'd give and take a little bit, like sort of like what Anthony and these guys do. And like, you know, like they have groups where everyone helps each other, you know. So we wanted to like build that here.
Yeah. And I think, you know, something you said made me think of this too, that, and it kind of goes back to our earlier part of our conversation, like this idea of being like you said, you had done the first film, and I guess, you know, some of your actors were willing to come along with you on this one, and it felt like a bit of a redemption. The truth of the matter is, from my point of view, you've got to be willing to treat everything like one big experiment. and that
Yeah.
some things will work,
Yeah.
some things will not. And, maybe you'll be on a run and you'll have like 5 things in a row that work great. And then something goes sideways. And the fact that you didn't let that first one, break you down, it speaks highly of your character and your desire to just be creative. And I really want you to, I just on a personal level, I deeply respect that, because it's hard, man. It's like, it's easy to allow something like I made a feature back in like 1999, never did anything with it. I did a couple little things after that, but then life, right?
Yeah.
Kids, job, blah, 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 got away from her. And it's like, and I've always, that if I had any regret, and I don't believe in regret, I think regret's stupid, but I have only regret is that I didn't appreciate more like how much fun all that was, because I was so like into my little ego, and I'm 22 years old, wanting to be the next Robert Rodriguez or some nonsense. And it's like, look, just have fun. And so now everything like Tyson and I are doing, everything, it's like, and why I love talking to guys like you, it's just like fun. Let's just have fun.
Yeah,
if it's not fun, why the hell are we doing it? And I love that you have a group of people that seem to get that, and they're like, hey, if that one hadn't worked out, let's do the next one. Let's do the next one. And I think there's something about that. They just keep moving forward is really commendable. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to say that.
And to piggyback on that, something Joel always says that I think anybody that's getting into filmmaking, I mean, like where I grew up, I was the same way, Ball. Like there wasn't an act. I was in Podunk, Midwest USA, where there was no. I mean, if you told somebody that you were going to make movies, they just looked at you and laughed. And unless you decided to drop everything and move to New York City. And I had a friend that did that and has become a successful playwright and author. But the point is, it was very, especially in the 80s and 90s, geographically confined. If you were serious about making film, you had to go to LA or to New York, or at the time, Florida. There was a lot of stuff being made down here in Florida. So, I wasn't involved in my first even semi-professional project till like a couple months ago with Joel. And I told him, I said, dude, I'm so thrilled just to be part. Like, you don't understand. Like I didn't have the chance to play with this stuff because you couldn't afford the technology or the cameras as a kid. Yeah. And now there's so much opportunity that, again, with an iPhone, man, you can make some solid stuff with your buddies. And if they're willing to work project after project with you. And the thing I was going to piggyback on with Joel, though, is anytime we work on anything, he's always like, this is plan A. This is the perfect shoot, the perfect script, but we're going to have a plan B, C, D, and E. And everything we worked on, how many times do we say, like, we're counting on, don't put all of your eggs in the basket, like we're going to use your dad's truck for this project. It has to take place in this truck, because what's going to happen? A week ago, your dad's going to wreck his truck, and then your entire project is
true story.
Exactly. So I say that, I just wonder,
his dad has this really cool, like, white work truck, like the traditional work truck. Like, we're like, oh, that'd be perfect for this idea we're working on. He literally texts me like a week ago with a picture. Yeah. And I'm like, well, first and foremost, your dad was okay, so that's what matters. But secondly, it's like, damn it, the truck is dead. So,
that's it.
Plan B.
I think you got to be.
And I think as long as you've got, and if everybody on your crew is willing to roll with those punches and say, listen, man, we were going to call this the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We don't have a fucking chainsaw, so we've now gone to the Blendermatic 5,000, whatever we got to do. You got to have those contingency plans. But especially if you're on a shoestring budget, you know what I mean, and you got 2 days at a location or 2 days with this actor. It's like, man, you got to be able to have a whole different battle plan if something screws up, because otherwise it will stop everything dead in the water. Everybody gets unmotivated because you can't shoot because you didn't have a backup plan. Now you're bleeding money on food and lodging, not getting anything done, and everybody else is going, fuck, man, this is like amateur hour.
And that's like when morale drops, like it's like everyone's like jumping off. Like, so that's why, like, I was so grateful that people still wanted to be involved, and like I wanted to make sure that I give them something back, that I had a premiere, that I could let them put that on their credit so they can get more films, like, because we're all like helping each other, like, and then it came to a point, like what you said, it's like, once, like, stuff always goes wrong on set, one way or another. Like, you can be outside shooting and it's going to rain. Like, we're going to shoot on Monday for a new zombie film that I'm making. which has got Lawrence Harvey from Human Centipede in it.
Oh, okay.
And we're shooting outside, and obviously it's winter in England, so it's, you know, you never know how it's going to go. Most likely it's going to rain, so it's like you have to always be, like you said, like you have to have plan A, B, and C, D. You have to be ready to just adapt on the fly. And I think a lot of it is life experience, you know, like, do you know, like a lot of the young filmmakers who are like maybe 18, 19, they don't have like the life experience of having to deal with that pressure. Everything's going wrong.
Yeah.
People are walking off set. This ain't working. That's not. And you still got to be able to keep it together to be like, you know, the captain of the ship through the storm. So it's like, for me personally, just going through tough life experiences made me learn, like, them life experiences were tough, and I made it through that. And like, this is fun. Like you said, like if it's not fun, then I'll stop doing it, you know, like, and once it becomes not fun, then it's time to like hang the gloves up and like, you know, step aside. So to me, it's like every film that you make, it's like a kid. It's like, I see it as like my legacy, like my kids, like, because it starts from nothing, from an idea. And that idea never fully comes to fruition in the way you have it. It morphs. And then by the time you finish with it, you're sick and tired of it. Like, I don't want to see it. I've seen it a million fucking times. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it ever again. But you still have to then, at the end of the process, which is what I find really hard, you still have to really enthusiastically promote it.
Yes.
You have to get it out to distributors. You have to send it to festivals. You feel like shit when no one's giving it no attention, no distributors are writing back, when no festivals are in. And then you have to have, speaking to people like Anthony, speaking to like Brian Paulin, who I'm a massive fan of, and he's a lovely guy, you know, and he's, in my opinion, one of the best guys doing it, you know. And these people, when I message them to say, you know, how do you feel like when you're in that situation? And they feel the same as what I'm feeling. I'm like, oh, okay, like everyone's feeling this way, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the real difficult things is like dealing with the competition around you, you know, and like not letting it like depress you, you know, because like I see other people's films, I'm like, oh shit, that's amazing. Like, how do they do, like, you know, and then I'm the kind of person that I'll reach out to them and say, oh, that's really good. Like, how did you do this, this, and this, you know? And sometimes then people are nice, sometimes they're not. Majority I've found of indie filmmakers that I've spoke to are nice, you know, and they sort of, even the ones that are like Brian Paulin, like Olaf Ittenbach, like these people that I look up to, you know, they got time for the average person. They don't know me, like they never met me, but you know, they got time because they remember when they were like that back in the early 90s, the 80s, whatever. They didn't have the same capacity that we do. Like they didn't like probably have the same opportunities, but you know, it's just, it makes you like carry on going. It makes you realize like you got to carve your own path out.
Yeah. Don't
compete with anybody. You know, when I'm editing and I'm working on my own film, I try not to watch any indie films. I try to just, you know, stay in this world that I've created, because otherwise you start changing, you know, you start changing your style, and then you become like, oh, I want to be like this person. And you know, you don't want to do that. Like, everyone has their own style and their own stories, you know, and you got to bring your stories. And if people like them, they like them. If they don't, you're never going to please everyone. No. And I think once you finish the film and you've sent it to like reviewers and festivals and distributors, you always feel really nervous, because you're like, what are they going to say? Are they going to slag it off? Are they going to hate it? You know? And I always think about that, like the negative side. And then obviously, like if they say good stuff, I'm like, oh, great. I didn't expect that, you know? So it's like, I guess you got to be your own biggest critic, you know?
Yeah. Do you find that, you know, you're kind of almost anticipating the negativity, and when something positive happens, do you find that it, you really enjoy that, or is it weirdly almost anticlimactic when you get the positive? You know what I'm saying? I guess I felt that before, where you're like, so it's almost like somebody gives you a compliment. Oh, thanks. It's almost like you're a masochist who secretly is awaiting the slogging to tell you what garbage that
you've emotionally prepared yourself to be on the defensive. So you're like, oh, great, I appreciate it, but
and that
let's
is
get on with the bullshit.
And,
so I can
and
fight.
that is totally a human psychology thing, right? Like we are like genetically predisposed to negativity bias. Like we so we get that one negative comment. We can have 1,000 positive. Oh my God, this is the greatest thing, blah, blah, blah. And then one person, it doesn't even have to be like explicitly negative. You're like, yeah, it just didn't work for me. And you're like, wait, what? Why did it work for you?
Like that one negative comment like cancels out all the good. But then
and that's a shame, isn't it? It's a shame.
Yeah, I've tried to you know, consciously stop that, because it's like
you have to.
If people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. Like it's not something that you can ever control. All you have to do is just be like, okay, why did they not like it? And I try to maybe not make them same mistakes, you know?
Yeah, and that's a key point, right? So if somebody says to you, I didn't like it, and they give you the reasons, and those reasons are very personal to them. Right? Yeah. Like, oh, that I don't really like things that have X, Y, and Z in them. Okay. Well, here's the thing. That's not something you can change without changing your vision as a filmmaker. So now if they say to you, well, I really didn't like it because, and they tell you some literal technical thing, like it went out of focus in this shot, or the sound dropped in this part, or whatever it is, you can then say to yourself, oh, well, that's a valid point. It did do that. And I, that's what I'm trying to get better about, is to catch those things. And you know, when you're shooting something really fast, you know, and I think that's what I realize is like, there is constructive, right? And when I was younger, my little ego couldn't even handle the construct. I would act like I wanted it, but I didn't really want it. Now I actually like hearing, okay, how can I make it? And it's also, I have found the older I get and the more I don't hold on so tightly to everything, that I just allow other people, like with my last couple of things I've done, I've had my kids helping me, and like my one son is manning the camera. Like when I was younger, I always had to be on camera. Like no one else. It's almost like I felt like I wasn't making a movie unless I was also the cameraman. But I've been letting him do it. And that's been like weirdly the most freeing thing for me, because I can see the big picture and I don't take it as personal. Like, and so editing has always been my favorite part. Like I loved it, but I'm like you, I take a while. Like I can go fairly quick, but like when I hear about people that make like 5 movies a year, I'm like, how is that even friggin' possible? I don't know how you make 5 movies in a decade, let alone a year. I have no idea, but go ahead, Jason.
I feel like I'm the guy here, like listening to you because I am not a filmmaker. I participate in
you are
that
in your
activity, but
in your heart, you're a storyteller.
I'm just saying, like listening to you guys talk, like I feel like I'm in film school, so I'm taking the notes and I keep coming up with advice that I want to share with everybody. And this is something that I think, you know, Joel's done, and Ball, I'm interested to get your thoughts on this too. But I feel like a recipe for disaster as a director is to be a micromanaging control freak, right? To your point, Joel, where I'm going to be behind the camera, I'm going to be on the boom mic, I'm going to be here. I think a good director knows is not necessarily the best at everything, but he hires or befriends the best people he has access to in those fields. He finds the guy that's the best in his area at special effects, and he trusts that guy. He hires the best sound guy. He hires the best. And I understand with a budget, sometimes you don't have that. But I feel like, Joel, even with your kids, when we do stuff, like I love watching Joel's son, Connor, is kind of his director of photography. It's his cameraman, his DP. Right? I mean, Joel says back and says, "Did you get that, Con?" And watching his kid like get into it, like behind the camera and do his own thing and push back a little bit against his old man and say, I want to try this though. But, and then when I see this, I'm like, it's so cool that like to just see Joel just sit back and be able to like watch everything and not have his hands in everything. You know what I mean? I think as a young filmmaker, you work with what you've got. And if you don't have the budget, you don't know anybody that does special effects well, then you're going to be on YouTube learning all this stuff. But man, if you get somebody that's passionate about that cares as much about visual effects as you do, is making like bring that guy in and say, listen, man, I'm giving you, I'll tell you what I want, and then I'm just going to trust that you're gonna put something awesome together.
And before people point out there, yes, except for when you're, unless you're Stanley Kubrick and David Fincher, to which I would say yes. And when you have their budgets, and and their filmography, they will talk. And I think as an indie filmmaker too, sometimes you do have to wear every freaking hat. Just if you're going to make something, maybe you are literally the only person I watched actually the video the other day where a guy made an entire feature film. He was the director. He was every crew member. He was the only actor, and he played
Laz Royaz.
What's that?
Have you heard of a guy called Laz Royaz? So he's an American guy.
Maybe that's who it was. Is he bald?
I don't know if he is now. But
I'm speaking as a fellow baldy, so
he was on. If you go on YouTube and you put in Vice, they did like a series about like underground filmmakers.
Okay, I don't know. This guy was like on YouTube, and he was more of a YouTuber, I think. But he put this movie out that took place in an office that he had done in his bedroom, and and the thing was is that he was working on his second feature. And what I got to give the guy credit for is he totally acknowledged the limitations and that it looks like he shot it in a bedroom, and like he understood. It wasn't like this. He wasn't deluding himself into being like, I'm making high art. He wasn't like that. But I think what is cool to me was that he was willing to, he wanted to do all those steps of the process. But to Tyson's point, there's a difference between having to do it out of necessity and doing it because you're being a control freak, right? And I think when I was younger, I was a total control freak. And that's a sign of insecurity, which then ties into your ego. And then that's just really at the end of the day, it's ego. Like if you keep your ego in check, because that goes back to negativity. It's like if somebody doesn't like something I made, cool. I mean, that's fine. You're right. It's none of my business what you think of me. Like it's none of my business. You have your thoughts.
I think it's like you're only as good as the team around you. So if you're in a good enough place, or you've met enough people where you can have a good cameraman that you get on with, you can have somebody who makes good music. Like I've got a really good composer called Rosanna Lawrence, who makes all my music, and like I will only go to her for my music, and then like you build up an SFX team. You make them, keep them happy. You make them understand that you value them. When another filmmaker comes to you and says, oh, I need an SFX team, you go to yours and you get them on that film. Then these people are grateful because you're giving them the opportunities to make more stuff. And you're not just, you're all mine. I'm not going to, that's really important. Like to me, I think I always look at like John Carpenter and Dean Cundey, them two made some amazing films together. And that was all because, like you said, like you and your son, Connor, you have that bond where you trust each other. He can say things to you, which, he knows you're not going to take personally. And as well, he's only saying them to make the film better. So it's like, when you're in that position and you've got a good cameraman or you've got a good editor or SFX team, you got to really keep them happy and make sure that they feel valued. And, that's sometimes a difficult thing, especially when people are not getting paid, because, you've got to basically sell them an idea. It's like being on Dragon's Den. You got to go in front of all these people, crew, cast, everyone, and you got to show them what you've done to make them believe that you can do something, and it's a constant turnover of people, because people will come and go over time, but you'll stay. The ones that are that want to keep working with you, they'll stay about, and and you end up making things, and you look back on it and you're like, I'm glad I stuck with that person. So.
Yeah.
I like your Carpenter reference, because that's, if you look back at his pantheon of work and most people aren't going to argue with you when you say that the early Carpenter years were his best, and well, what did they all have in common? Dean Cundey, and even the casting, Charles Cyphers, that's the point where it's like, look, I've got this character. It's a Charles Cyphers character. I'm just going to send him the script. I know he's going to give me what I need out of this. You know what I mean? That's just one more thing you can cross off your list as like a paranoid director. It's, to your point, it's like, okay, I know that I don't have to work. I don't have to spend night after night after night worried about the soundtrack or the audio effects for this, because I've got the right person and they're going to get the job done. So that's one headache I don't have to mess with, and I think that's part of being it. And we always, Joel and I say, as much fun as we have this, we always try to treat anything we do as a business too. and as
Yeah.
business managers, and you say, okay, what makes a good manager? And I think that's knowing that, you know, you're not going to run the entire corporation by yourself. So as long as you hire the right people and put them in the right positions, you know, that's what makes, when you stand up and you talk about a film that's been successful and you say, listen, I couldn't have done it without this person, and you truly mean that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To your point, I think your crew realizes that too, and they're going to, you know, they'll go to hell and back with you.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
for sure. All right. So, Bal, let everybody know where they can find Mother Mortis or the Birdwatcher or any of your other work, how they can follow you.
Yeah. So my Instagram is Apotheosis Productions. I've got a link tree on there, which has got a big cartel link. It's got all my films on there. So Mother Mortis in America is distributed by SRS Cinema, run by Ron Bonk. He's a great guy. And then in the UK, you can order it directly from me on my big cartel. And then in Europe, you can order it from Ultra Visual Films, which is run by Tom Heigl. And that's Germany, but he covers all of Europe. So that's Mortis. Birdwatcher, you'll be able to get it on VHS from Anthony in the US. He'll be the first guy that will have it. And then on DVD, I'm speaking to a few distributors, so I'll see who comes forward with that, and then you'll be able to see that. I've got shorts on my YouTube, which you can watch. A lot of them we made in like 72 hours and 66 hours, like competitions and stuff. So you can definitely go and watch them. But follow me on Instagram at Apotheosis Productions, and just message me, you know, if you ever want a link with the DVDs that people order from me. They get a pin, they get a Mother Mortis pin. I'm going to be coming to the US in October for ClickFest on the 11th. I'll be coming then. I'll be bringing stuff with me as well.
Where's ClickFest?
It's going to be in Missouri. So I think it's Fulton, Missouri.
Okay.
So I'll be there, and you know, I'll probably come and see Anthony and that, and you know, I'll try to come see you guys and bring you some goodies, some DVDs, some pins.
That'd be awesome.
And, you know,
that'd be great. Yeah, and we'll link to everything in the description too, under the video. And then the YouTube channel is also Apotheosis. Is that what's that?
Yeah, just Apotheosis Productions. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, man, this has been honestly great. I love talking to indie filmmakers. I love your attitude. I another thing I know Trace is probably tired of hearing me say, but I always like say have like the heart of an amateur, right?
Yeah.
But show up like a professional. And I feel like that's what you subscribe to as well as an attitude, and it's greatly appreciated. So, man, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, thank you a lot. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Mom and Pops.